So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the organization just briefly and then get into what I know you're interested in, which is the fellowship. Fellowship will start in January in Benicia and will start in February in Vacaville. And I'll get into some of the details of it in a few minutes. First, though, I wanted to start with some questions. And again, this is something you can put in the chat or if you feel comfortable unmuting to mention. But I'd like to get an idea of what are some of the environmental justice issues that you're thinking about, as well as some of the climate issues that you're thinking about. So if there's anything that comes to mind, please feel free to share that. I know we're looking at so much with air pollution, water pollution, where our communities are located. And then in recent years with the wildfires, with, the severe extreme drought that we're seeing. And now with the rains, the flooding in areas that were damaged by the fires or drought. Yeah, the native grasslands and what a difference that's meant for the ecology and that sort of thing as well. So thinking about these things, I'd like to ask you just for some reflection on some images. You may have seen these before, but looking at things like air pollution, trash pollution, water pollution, and thinking about what emotions that brings up. Because a lot of times we connect with the data, but we're also connecting with how we're seeing this affect us as individuals, our communities, and our society. And thinking about those emotions similarly for these things, when you're looking at the wildfires and the smoke, the flooding, areas affected by drought and heat, the heat island effect, all of those things that we're seeing in those communities. Yeah, I know it can sometimes create sadness or anger or frustration or fear. And thinking about those emotions, then, the question is, well, which populations are bearing the brunt of these environmental injustices? Which populations are most vulnerable to our climate impacts? And that's something that we're going to try to get at with some of the fellowship, is not only thinking about what's going on in the environment, but who it affects the most, and getting at some of the underlying reasons for that. Some of the things that you observe as you're looking at the information, because data is one thing, but how it affects our communities is something, beyond that. One last set of images, and natural landscapes, pocket gardens, school and community gardens, and the emotions that those images bring up. So yeah, I see joy. There have been studies on how having these exposures or the access to natural areas or green areas really makes a difference for our mental health. It makes a difference for, how we function. And so similarly to the other questions, it does beg the question then about access and about equity. So again, that's something we want to think about as we're looking at the environmental challenges and we're looking at the solutions. How are we making sure that those benefits are equitable? So thank you guys for interacting with me a bit on that. So about Sustainable Solano, just briefly, we've been around for 20 plus years. We started in Benicia, actually with community gardens there, and then started doing a lot with permaculture and sustainable backyards. And then the organization has grown throughout the county. And so a lot of our work now focuses on building resilient neighborhoods, communities around sustainable landscaping, as well as community connection. The conversation circles work within that, really engaging with communities about some of the environmental challenges and solutions that communities would like to see, and the local food system and how that interacts with the environment and with the local economy. And of course, the Youth Leadership and Workforce Development Program, which this fellowship's a part of. So just some pictures again, these are some of the demonstration food forests. These are water-wise edible gardens at both private residents as well as schools and community locations. Some images from school programs. We've done things with school gardens, some environmental science curriculum, that sort of thing. The images on the left here are actually from the Caretakers program in Liberty, which preceded the fellowship, and the participants there actually worked on creating a food forest as part of that program. So yeah, why you're here, the fellowships. The fellowships start with some just fundamental programs. And so Awakening the Dreamer, which I'll talk about a little bit, just really gives an idea of some of the environmental and social justice issues that we're facing in the world these days. And then Turning to One Planet Living Principles, really looking at how do we live within the resources of our planet. You may have heard the fact where if everyone in the world used resources the way we do here in the US, it would take 5 Earths to support that lifestyle. And so how do we really live within the resources of the planet and have healthy, happy lives? And then getting into exploring the environmental and social justice issues within your community, looking at the information there, talking with city leaders about what you're finding through the research, what's been done, what are things you like to see done, having the hands-on experience, which I'll go into more, but to give you an idea of what could be done on an individual level or a neighborhood level. And then bringing all of that together into these community presentations that kind of capstone the program. So commitment. So there is a 3-month commitment. As I mentioned, Benicia will start in January and go through that very first Saturday in April. And then Vacaville will start in early February. And I have it'll go through April 14th. We need to finalize it. It might actually end with the presentations on April 9th, but that's something we would discuss as a group in terms of which of those dates is better for everyone. There'll be 10 weeknight meetings over Zoom. 5:30 to 7 p.m. Tuesday nights in Benicia, Thursdays in Vacaville. I do want to have a discussion at those preliminary meetings about the days of the week and how they work for everyone. And so if everyone in the group wants to move to a different day and that can be accommodated, we're very open to doing that. We want this to be something that works for you, but we also know that people need dates to start with in terms of planning and seeing if this will fit. There'll be 4 hands-on Saturday workshops. Those will each last 4 hours. Most of them will be 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There are a couple of days in Benicia where they'll probably be 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I'll talk a little bit about why that is a little bit later. The local food system class will also be a cooking class. So really how you're creating healthy meals from in-season produce and why a local food system is an important part of looking at the local environment. So that'll, again, be over Zoom. And then the final presentation, which is planned in person. There are 15 spaces available, each in Benicia and Vacaville. and you have to be a student in that city or live in the city. And if you complete the program commitments, then there's the eligibility for that $500 stipend. So as I mentioned, Awakening the Dreamer is kind of the big picture we start with. This is a roughly 2-hour online program. We'll do some of it together. Some of it you'll do on your own. We'll come back to reflect on it, discuss it, really discuss what, is interesting about it and even where it may fall short. So it asks questions like, where are we? How did we get here? What's possible? And then, as I mentioned, we'll turn to One Planet Living. And as you can see here, there are definitely things in the hands-on component with land and nature, sustainable water, that, may come to pass with this, in thinking about policy, thinking about equity, thinking about, what is the local economy, that sort of thing. We will be working on a personal action plan through One Planet Living that just, again, thinks about kind of what can be done on the individual or the personal level. But this is something that can also inform very much, what's going on in a community, what's going on in an organization, or on an even larger scale. And then we'll really get into looking at some of the environmental data. Cal EnviroScreen is a great resource for looking at everything from, air quality to water quality to how close a community is to a solid waste site. And so we'll look at the environmental challenges within the community, within Solano County, and really within the region. We'll also have a chance through the hands-on to do some soil testing. And so really doing some citizen science to see what you see in different areas within the community and add to some of the data that's out there. You'll be able to take all of that again and meet with city leaders to really discuss what you're seeing, and what they've been doing, and talk about, what can be done. And then there'll be the hands-on. So as I mentioned, the soil testing is a part of the program in both Benicia and Vacaville. There'll be some time spent on observation and really looking at a site and thinking about the different factors that influence what's going on in that environment. In Benicia, we are working with the Benicia Tree Foundation. And so the hope is that there will be 2 hands-on days working with them on a tree planting project where you'll learn how to lead the community on one of those days. And in Vacaville, we'll be working with the Solano Gardens program on a community garden project. And similarly, learning how to work with the community, both to gather ideas for the garden, and to help lead with the creation or the maintenance of the garden. And then both of the programs will have an opportunity toward the end of the program. We have a soil biology specialist who will come and talk with us about soil life, because healthy soil, it captures more water and holds and retains it. It's better for storing carbon, and it's an important part of that. And then, as I mentioned, there'll be the Zoom class for the local food system and cooking. These are just some images from the Liberty program with the hands-on. So, definitely be some chances to, get plants in the ground and that sort of thing. But then also really think about how that, can be applied to what you're learning through the program and what you're discovering through the program. And then there'll be the opportunity for the final community presentations, which can be done in, small groups within the fellowship. And then we ask everybody to then share their final presentation with, and I have on here community group, but really it's about, you guys are going to be the knowledgeable ambassadors. You're going to have everything that you've taken from this program. And we want you to share that. And that might be with friends, it might be with family members, it might be with a group or organization you belong to. But that will really be up to your comfort and your passion and who you want to share it with. We just ask that you go out and share this, since this will really be from your involvement with the program and within the community. So that's it for my short presentation. I threw up a few things on here for ways between now and the beginning of the programs that you could connect with us. We have a monthly newsletter. We have different sorts of opportunities to come out and volunteer or work on a project. If you want to do that, you can always reach out to me if you have questions.